Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Taking Over the Photo Pit podcast. This week, we are on episode 39 with Faith Nguyen photos, and this one is really exciting to me because if you guys don't know, I browse Instagram looking for new photographers almost every single week. I am out there in the hashtags looking at concert photographers, looking at new concerts, and just trying to find photographers across the world that inspire me. People that their photos stand out, people that just look really interesting, have great work, have, such positivity in their posts, and I reach out to them and ask them to be on the podcast. And Faith is one of those people. Now, I came across her portfolio not too long ago and was absolutely floored by what I saw. She has such a talent for lighting and capturing these really, really gorgeous scenes. And I just knew that I had to have her on the podcast and get her perspective of how she shoots and what she's looking for. I highly recommend you check out her work. All of the links are in the description of the podcast here. But right now we're going to jump right into this episode because I absolutely love talking to Faith and hearing what she had to say. So let's get right into it. Hi, Faith.
Hello.
I am so excited to have you here. We have not personally met yet, so I am so excited to sit down and hear from you just about your journey, learn more about you and your amazing photography. So I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much. Let's just jump right into it. Can you do a quick intro of yourself, your background, how you got into photography and all the good stuff?
Of course. Well, thank you first of all for having me. I'm super excited to be here too. And when you reached out on Instagram, we didn't even follow each other at this point, but I'm so glad that this kind of connected us. So I'm Faith. I am a freelance photographer based in Boston, Massachusetts, and I mostly work in concerts, events, and portraits. That's kind of my main thing. But I started about 5-6 years ago. My family bought a Costco DSLR to have for literally just the family use. It was a $500 Canon Rebel set, and I promptly stole it and claimed it as my own. And from that moment forward, I just fell in love with the medium of photography. I've always been very interested in the visual arts, but when I picked up a camera, that was just something that really spoke to me from the beginning. And I just began playing around with it, taking pictures of my sister and my friends when we were out on vacations, and just kind of whatever happened to make sense for me at the time. And I eventually got involved in my school's yearbook. That was super fun to get to shoot some sports events and just random things happening around the school that were just relevant to me as a 15-year-old. And then eventually I pursued it to the point where I became a editor / second, third shooter at a wedding venue in my hometown.
Wow.
I was actually a dishwasher at this wedding venue originally, but I befriended one of the girls who was working there as a photographer as well. I expressed my interest in her, and it just so happened that they were taking on a lot of new clients, and this wedding venue did all in-house photography, so it was kind of just a perfect role for me to get into. And that was kind of the first time I really had a mentor. I had two really amazing coworkers, one who was the lead photographer there and one the girl who helped me get the job in the first place. And they both taught me so much about just the actual settings of a camera, how to compose an image. I remember I have so many clear memories of just sitting down with the two of them and going through the interface of Lightroom Classic for the first time, and just going step by step through each and every little slider and just learning about it. And so that was really a big point of inflection in my journey, getting that job. And then of course COVID happened right after that. Weddings weren't really a thing, so that slowed back down. And then things picked up again when I was leaving for college, so I did a little bit more wedding photography work. But as someone who's always been big into music and concerts, that was the dream. And I wasn't quite sure how to make that dream happen, but I ended up coming to Northeastern University in Boston to go to college. And I just walked around the club fair on like the first week of school, and I found a music magazine, and they were just like, does anyone want to go to free concerts? And I was like, me, I want to go to free concerts. And then I found out that I like wasn't even aware of the whole field of music journalism at this time, but through this club that I just like absolutely fell in love with, it's become like kind of the biggest deal in my life at this point. I spent a lot of time doing it. I've made so many amazing friends from it, and yeah, I definitely feel like I've kind of found my thing. I study architecture at Northeastern, actually, which is great. I love architecture, but there's a little bit of overlap between the two things, I think. But the photography thing is, yeah, it's definitely where I feel my most confident self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you do a lot of the different kinds of photography. I very much kind of like stick myself in only concerts. So whenever someone shoots a whole bunch of other things, I'm just like, wow, like I love this. So you do a lot of like portrait works. Do you still do weddings, and you kind of do everything, and music is like your favorite, or like what's your process, and like what do you shoot most often?
Well, so at this point in my life, I'm like just like super happy to take on any work that comes my way. So it's like really whatever just happens to present an opportunity to me. I will say that portraits are like people, I think, is where I find the most joy capturing, and I do see myself as like working in concerts from the perspective of a portrait photographer. And that's like, I feel like a lot of what drives my style is my like original like upbringing in portrait photography. And I just like really love the idea of like me acting as a medium for someone else's like vision to like capture. And so even within the portrait photography, most of the work I do is with other creatives, whether that's like dancers or singers or bands, fashion people who work in the fashion industry. I don't know what to call them. I really love kind of the ability to like have someone tell me what their vision is creatively, and then bring that to life in like a physical visual sense.
I love that.
So I haven't done as many weddings recently. That's kind of like a one-off thing. I don't think I could do that full time. It's a lot of stress.
So much stress.
Like, all these like different like niches of photography, they're all so different, and I think that helps keep me interested, or prevents me from like burning out from one thing or another, because like working in studio portraits, it's like you have control over everything, like all the lighting conditions, the colors, like you have complete control, which is like sometimes very scary but also sometimes awesome. And then with concert photography, you have like 12 minutes of potentially very terrible lighting. You have no idea what you're walking into most of the time, and you just have to make it work out of whatever you're given. And so that is like also really scary, but then at the same time, it makes, when you get the shot, it's like so much more gratifying. So I'm like, I feel very early in my career of photography, so I'm like still very excited to try all these new things. And I think despite doing a lot of different things, I've gotten to a point where I have a style that like kind of carries through all of my different work.
And I saw that in your work too, and that was one thing that I wanted to talk about, is that like when I look at your work, the biggest thing that stands out to me that I just absolutely adore is your use of light. Even in your concert photos, like the way that you capture like light flares and just like little moments when the lighting is like perfect and it's just touching people's faces in a way, it's like very specific. It's not like, oh, here's a chance shot that you got. It's like, this is very pointed of like how you either wait or use lighting. So I was very curious about this because it just really blew me away. And then you also have, on Instagram, you have a photo set that's pinned on your profile that shows like shadows and lighting captured in just such a beautiful way. So I recommend everyone that's listening to definitely like go to your Instagram and check it out, because your use of lighting just like stands out to me so much. So I'm very curious about like how you already talked about like your portrait work and that being part of your style. Is lighting something that you're very like attuned to, I guess? And then like how do you capture what you do? How do you try to keep that style consistent?
I think definitely lighting is like a huge part of what like I am like initially looking for, both when I'm shooting and when I'm culling after I've shot something. I think one of the things that makes the work I do unique is that it's a gear thing, honestly. The main lens that I shoot on is a 35 millimeter prime lens at f1.4, which is personally like, I think it's like the perfect concert photography lens, but most people shoot much wider and at a much higher aperture. Mm-hmm. And I think I love the kind of like glowy halo effect, the depth of field that low aperture gives. And that's like one of the things that when I was originally shooting on a really low budget set and all I had was a 50 millimeter lens that cost like $200, but it had a low aperture. As I was like experimenting and learning, that's one of the things that I really love to produce in my work is this like kind of like glowy.
Yeah.
I love a backlit shot. Yeah. There's something about it that I just really love. And I'm always particularly looking for like silhouettes too. There's something about that contrast that really speaks to me. The light and shadow thing, I don't know if it's because I'm like an architecture student. We're always talking about like light and shadow and texture and contrast and all the other good principles of design. But when I'm culling, I think the first thing I look for is light. And everything else I can pretty much save if I have to. I shoot a lot when I'm at shows, and especially it's really stroby and like it's hard for me to tell what I'm actually getting. Like I'll just click away. And especially there's been a couple shows that I've been out recently, I don't know why, but like all the artists I've shot have been just like allergic to lighting for some reason, and it'll be like red and hazy for like 90% of the song, but then every once in a while, boom, a white strobe will come on. And so I'll like literally sit there and I'll like listen to the music and I'm like, okay, I know on the like the fourth beat of the measure that this light is gonna turn on, and I'll wait and I'll get it eventually. And I think there's like a little bit of a mindset thing to it too, where like you can't feel like you failed if you've taken 800 photos and only 5 of them turn out good, because you still got 5 good photos at the end of the day. And it's like, that was something that I had to learn coming out of portraits, where like I would go shoot for like, I don't know, 20 minutes, take like 200 photos and then like return, I don't know, 50 of them. And so, because it's like outside and there's light and people aren't moving around very much, but it's a very different world in concerts. But then also when I'm editing, I think I really like to play out the contrast, really bring highlights way up. Another strategy that I use a lot is like partially in how I position myself when I'm actually shooting. I do try to think about like the way you would think about studio light, how you have like a main front light and then you have either like side lights or back lights to like just add depth and contrast. So like it's a trap being straight on to the lead singer. Like you feel like that's the best place to be, but it's truly the worst. Like 'cause the mic is like straight onto their face, and you just like, I don't know, there's something about it that like seems appealing at first, but once you start shooting it never really works out. So
everyone crowds there in the pit too, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, move around. You're all blocking this and it's not the best shot. So I agree with you. Love that.
So I like really like I try to pay attention to like what's on stage, what kind of light is happening there, and then position myself so that I'm like lined up with the lead singer and also a light behind them that kind of like they can eclipse and create some like nice lens flares sometimes too, which is like honestly a thing that I learned doing portraits outside at like golden hours. Like positioning your subject in between like a tree and then the sun behind it, because it just like creates really nice glowy light, and that's just something that I really enjoy. So
yeah, you said a few really great things that I definitely want to echo, and the interesting one that comes up a lot on this when I talk to people is like the overshooting and like shooting a lot. And I think that when I started, there was something about like someone mentioned something about like the ratio, the return ratio of how many good photos I had versus photos that I just like threw away technically. And that like traumatized me for the longest time of like being like, oh, I have to have like a 20% return ratio or something like that. And you said like, as long as you walk away, you know, with some good shots, you did the thing, really. Yeah. And I love that, because I feel like I was just like, oh, I have to return all these photos. And you really don't. At the end of the day, really you just have to like have something.
I know.
And if you have a bad shoot, you have a bad shoot. That happens literally to everyone. But I love that you were talking about the backlighting of shots, because you can absolutely have a great shot of an artist, but if you have that glowy like backlight, just adds something to it. So I love that. And I think that like going through your portfolio and your work, you can definitely see like how you kind of like capture that. And the other thing that you mentioned that I just wanted to echo here is like the counting and waiting for things, is like position yourself. Like you can be patient. And it's funny because like shooting a lot and being patient sound like they're two opposite things. But like you said, to like find where you want to be, and if you know a light's coming, like shoot, 50 shots right then when you get your lighting. I love that. I think that's a great tip. And it definitely comes through in your work. I just think that the way you capture movement with all of the lighting on concerts are fantastic. So thank you for all of those tips.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words too. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I want to talk a little bit about your gear because, well, first of all, you said that you started with the Rebel like set box from Costco, which I think is hilarious. I've heard so many things about people starting with the Rebels, so I think that's one that a lot of people resonate with. I want to hear a little bit about more of like what you shoot on now. You mentioned the 35 prime, so are you also just like completely a prime shooter, or like what other lenses do you bring into the fold, if any?
Yes, not completely a prime shooter, and I will say the Rebel, as terrible as it was at times, it also really forced me to learn how to use camera settings. Yeah. When you have a great camera, you can get away with a lot, but when you have a shitty Rebel, like you gotta lock it in. So I can't speak too poorly on the Rebel. It's taught me a lot of things. But now I'm on Canon's R6, the mirrorless, which changed my life, truly, upgrading from the Rebel to that. And usually I have my 35 prime on that. If I'm at a small show with a tight pit, I'll also have a second body that I'll pair with either the 24 to 105 kit lens that I have or the 75 to 300 kit lens that I have. I have a pretty low end gear setup at the moment, which I'm okay with. When I go to bigger shows, festivals, things that are like soundboard, I will rent a larger, longer lens. But I honestly can't complain too much about the like really cheap lenses that I've been using up until this point. I had a photographer tell me once when I was like in the pit talking to them, and I was like, he was the house photographer and I was like this random college girl that had shown up, and he was like very nice, but it's just like a lot of unsolicited advice, which is like,
absolutely,
thank you. But anyways, he said something to me like he looked at my gear and was like, oh, interesting, whatever. And he kind of said something along the lines of like, you have to invest in the gear if you want to like make it. And it just felt like he said to me that like, you can't make it work with the setup that you have. And I like kind of took that as like a fuel of spite to like prove him wrong. Because concert photography is one of those things that has such a high barrier to entry. And if you like don't have the means originally, it's like it's a very hard thing to break into. So I've like kind of tried to prove to myself that I can do it with this $200 lens that I bought secondhand, and honestly it's like worked out for me enough at this point. It definitely limits me at sometimes, and I'm like, I am saving up to invest in like an actual 70 to 200 and like be one of the cool kids with a big lens on my camera. But there's like a kind of softness to the cheap lens that I actually quite enjoy. And then I've never been a fan of shooting really wide. I think it's the portrait thing. Like even 35 is too wide for me sometimes. Like I like the detail of like a more portrait style photograph. So the wide lens I really only use for like crowd shots, and like after the first 3, like I'll head to the back of house and try to get like a full shot of the kind of the whole venue. But that is my gear setup. I also make use a lot of star filters and prisms and like whatever random things I can do to just add a little extra interest into my photos, especially at a show that's like dude with a guitar who just stands there the whole set, which is like nothing wrong with that, but like sometimes you gotta add a little to make your photos interesting.
You literally gave me chills when you were talking about like your gear making it work, because one of like my big things that I've complained about with music photography is the barrier to entry. And it is the fact that like people kind of gatekeep in the music industry here to say like, you have to have the best of the best. You need a full frame camera. You need these lenses. And I shot on a 35 and a 50 prime and a camera body that was a DSLR, crop sensor, all in total less than, I want to say like $700 at the time. Mm-hmm. And I did that for years, like literally like 3 years. And now there's just so much talk about like, get the best of the best, spend the, $2,000. And for new people coming into the industry, I think it's terrifying. I think that a lot of people think that they're less than when they show up in the pit. I feel like a lot of people feel like they're excluded, or they're kind of, this, like imposter syndrome.
Yes.
That they're not welcome somewhere because their gear isn't as expensive. And I absolutely hate that. And that's like one of the reasons that I love talking about gear here and like how you started, is because like you are proof that like a kit lens will look beautiful. It's all about how you use it. And people shit talk kit lenses all the time. So I absolutely love that you mentioned that. That just like made me like so happy inside to like know this. And yeah, your work is fantastic. So like everyone that's listening, like gear's only a part of how you present your work. And the rest is your eye, your vision, all of that. Yeah. So I love that.
It's the same thing as saying that you can't create amazing art with like paints that you bought from Walmart rather than like the nice professional grade things. It's like, that's another thing that's a pet peeve of mine, is when people say like, oh, like your work is so professional, or oh, your gear is so professional. Like I feel like the word professional gets thrown around a lot, and like who's to say what it actually means? Like I don't know, I feel like if you are like, I'm a photographer, this is what I do, like, you can call yourself a professional. And so that's another thing that's like kind of gate kept that I think doesn't need to be by any means. Like, we're all working in this industry, it's a profession pretty much, so yeah. Think of yourself as a professional.
Yeah, I love that. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about kind of like making it in the industry, which kind of goes with a little bit of what you're saying of like, what are you doing currently in the music industry? Are you like shooting freelance? Are you shooting for a publication? There's a lot of things and like paths that people take as music photographers. So I'm always curious to hear about like how you're like shooting shows, who you're shooting shows with, whether it's freelance or publications or something else.
Definitely. And this is a thing that I change my mind on all the time, because I think the concept of making it is so personal to you and your values and your goals. So what I say definitely will not apply to everyone, and it shouldn't. So and like, I'd say 90% of the shows that I go to, I do as press with either a publication at my school, or maybe one that's local to Boston, or maybe one that's a little bigger. But that's where I do most of my work. And when I think about the fact that most of that work that I do is like essentially like my own time that I'm volunteering, like, I think it would be easy to feel like, oh, I'm never gonna make it, you know? But I truly do love it so much that you know, that's just part of the world. And I feel very successful even in that fact, that I've been able to be a part of the publications that I have been, kind of move up within those. I'm like the photo director for the music magazine that I joined freshman year now.
Incredible.
Just the fact that I like am regularly emailing with publicists of these famous people, like, I don't know, it feels very cool to me. I do some freelance work when I can. That is something that often just falls upon my lap randomly. I can't say I've figured out the formula for the perfect cold email, which I don't know if anyone truly has. Yes, the concept of making it in concert photography is a really difficult one, because there's just like not a lot of opportunities to go around for so many really talented people. And it's like, it's one of those things where like musicians and creatives already don't make a ton of money, so if you're trying to get paid by the musicians, like, you're kind of out of luck a lot of times. So that doesn't necessarily bother me. I think a lot of people might not expect that coming into concert photography. I think a lot of people who aren't aware of the world get the impression that I'm like booking all these gigs and working directly with all these artists, which is like very much not the case. But that is the goal one day. I really love to go on tour. I don't think I would want to do it full time or for very long, but just to experience all the music industry world has to offer. Truly, the moments where I feel like I've made it are like when I show up to the photo pit and I know every single person who's there and we get to hang out, and it's like the best thing days. Ever.
Yeah.
Or like someone who I really look up to recommended me as a photographer. Like, it's the little things in life for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think that a lot of the people that I talk to, I'm lucky in the sense that we all love being in the music industry. We love listening to music, watching concerts. So we're kind of like living the dream a little bit, like regardless of kind of what level and like what we're doing. I love that you're like, hey, want to go on tour? Maybe not full time. Touring sounds to me like a lot of work. Yeah. So I'm always like, you guys go. That sounds fun. I'll see you in the pit here in LA. So I love that. I love that you really just enjoy what you do. And I think that I've said this so many times, but it just shows through on your work. I think that when you're excited about being there, you get a lot better shots, to be honest, than like
Definitely.
people just shooting because they need to. So I absolutely love that. Well, to wrap all of this up, I know that I've been talking to you for a bit, so I don't want to hold you for too long, but I want to hear your best tip or piece of advice that you would love to pass on to anyone listening.
This is like not necessarily a photography tip, but I think it's very relevant to the world of concert photography, just thinking about opportunities and networking and things like that, especially for all of the young women out there, people of color who like haven't traditionally had the successes that maybe other people had. And I had someone tell me this, so it's like not my thing that I came up with, but basically the tip that I have is to never be the person to tell yourself no. Always let someone else tell you no. And what that means to me is that if you are in your own head saying, oh, this will never work out, oh, they'll never respond to my email, oh, they'll never whatever, like you're the one telling yourself no. Mm-hmm. Let someone else tell you no. Reach out for that opportunity, and you're gonna get used to hearing the no's, and then they're not gonna sting as bad after you've heard a bunch of them. So I try to tell myself this a lot when I'm like looking for work or trying to make connections with people. Like I was at this one show where I was shooting for an opener, but the headliner was there and their management was there, and I was like, should I go say hi? Like, is that weird? If it's weird and they don't want to talk to me, they can tell me that. But I'm not going to be the one to decide that for myself. So I went up and I introduced myself, and everyone was just super sweet, super nice. And I like connected with them on Instagram and everything. And like, that would just have never happened if I let myself like kind of sit in that fear and not make something out of that. And it's like, it's not a skill that I've perfected by any means. But it's a necessary discomfort that you have to feel if you're going to want to make it eventually.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great bit of advice, and definitely something to keep in mind at all times. Just do the thing, and you're right. The no's, they'll just like go right past you. You won't even think about them after a while. Well, thank you, Faith, so much for being here with me. It was so lovely talking to you, hearing about your journey, your photography, and just hearing it straight from you. I love these conversations, so thank you so much for sitting down with me. Can you please give a quick shout out for where everyone can find you online?
Thank you so much. Concert photography is like my favorite thing to talk about ever, so I'm so happy to be here. I am Faith Nguyen Photos on Instagram. That's pretty much the only social media I'm on. FAITHWIN Photos. I'd love to be connected with more photographers. So thank you for doing this and giving me the opportunity to meet you and hopefully a bunch of other people.
Absolutely. Everyone go follow Faith, and definitely check out her pinned photos on Instagram because they're really beautiful. And you'll see what we're talking about when we were talking about lighting this whole time. So Faith, thank you again so much for being here with me, and I hope to see you in the pit.